Hello and welcome to the Nerdom Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things pop culture, cinema, and geek. I am your host, Cody Weiland, and I'm joined again today by Austin Chase. How are you doing today?
Good. It's good to be back.
Yeah. Today we discuss, we discuss one of the pretty much biggest brands that Disney puts out right now, besides Marvel, which is Pirates of the Caribbean. And some of the things that prompted this specific topic is the court case going on right now. You know, Johnny Depp is being sued by Amber Heard in what seems to be a Law and Order-esque style court case. But Disney's putting a lot of faith into the outcome of this one, because whether or not they like to admit it, this imposes an intriguing question. If a series is really reliant on a specific actor or specific criteria, and it's gone at one point, is that series reliable?
Yeah, I think it was interesting how they did the movies. They did the original 3, which were great. Then they did At Stranger Tides, the mermaid one, that everybody forgets about because it was bad. Then they did the 5th one, Dead Men Tell No Tales, with Captain Salazar. Great movie, bad execution. And then they were gonna do a continuation of another 2 and make that a trilogy. But then they didn't, because they didn't have enough revenue that came from the 5th movie.
Right, and this really stems from this mindset that Hollywood's having right now, that we have to make these movies to serve a universe, because it's one of the biggest disservice Marvel has done. They create this idea that you can only be successful if you create a cinematic universe, and that's one of the pitfalls that The Mummy ran into. They built up their movie not to support a story like the Brendan Fraser version did. They did it to support their world.
Yeah.
And that's what Pirates of the Caribbean did so well. You watch Black Pearl and it has a beginning, middle, and end, and there's a little bit of a hint that there could be something going forward. But as a whole, it's a movie that you can watch and not really say you want to see another one. Everybody goes off with a happy ending, and you're fine with that.
Yeah, I would say the only one that doesn't give you an option for that is the 2nd one, because it's a direct cliffhanger into the 3rd.
Right. But even then, the 2nd one...
Yeah, even then, the 2nd one was great, but if I never saw the 3rd one, I would have been content only seeing the 2nd, because it was good.
Right, because it has that ending where, as an audience member, you look at it and you realize, yeah, that's probably how he would go out. He goes out down with his ship. Because what Pirates of the Caribbean does, for the longest time, is that they took the old adages of the sea, Davy Jones, the Kraken, the ghost ships, and they just fleshed out those concepts. Going down with the ship is one of the oldest adages, but it's something that they took literally with that movie, and it worked.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing with Transformers. Realistically, that series should have been over by the 2nd one, maybe even the 3rd. But everything after that has just been bad.
Yeah,
Not saying the actors were bad. It's just the CGI went downhill, and then the story kind of lost its momentum.
Right. And these movies, they just come out one after the other, and we don't question whether or not we should be getting these. It's kind of like Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. You spent so much time trying to figure out if you can do it. You never asked the question if you should.
If you should, yeah. That's still one of my favorite lines to go back to in an argument.
Exactly. And the problem that we're going to have is that Disney still is making bank off of these movies.
Even when they're doing bad.
Even when they're doing bad things, yeah. Now, granted, there's some movies that follow that same mentality, but then they completely go broke. They make very little at the box office. And they just...
Like
The Mummy.
Divergent.
Oh, Divergent. Yeah, The Mummy.
And that one's based off a book, so they even had the format to finish it, but then didn't because it just didn't get enough money in. And then the Percy Jackson series.
Well, even those ones, those were based off of a series. So when you look at something that's based off a book series versus something that's, I dare say, original, you run into the thing where, you're trying to adapt the book, but that's really creative interpretation about bringing that book to life.
I think Harry Potter did it the best, where they actually had J.K. Rowling on set and got to pick the actors. She had creative freedom to pick the actors to play the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was some, she made sure they stick to the books. And if they had to pull something out to save time in the movie, she got to be the one to rewrite the script.
Right.
So that way it was still her story and her universe. I think that's one of the best, book to movie interpretations ever. I just got done rewatching that series a couple days ago, and I've read all the books and was never disappointed by the movies, just because she got to be there to create the whole atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah, and
they had some big problems. The second movie, after the second movie, the actor for Dumbledore died. So then they swapped to the actor that played Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, and he did phenomenal.
Nope. That's wrong guy.
Nope.
Yeah, that's the wrong guy.
No. He did Gandalf and
No, he didn't.
Dumbledore.
No, he didn't. You're talking about Ian McKellen.
Here, let me look it up. Did Gandalf?
You are wrong right now.
Play Dumbledore.
I'm sorry, but you're just wrong. Let it sink in for a second.
Oh, I am wrong.
Yep, and we captured that. So, in future,
this has been an episode of.
So if you would,
Nerdom Podcast.
if you wouldn't mind, who is the actor who plays Gandalf? Not Gandalf. Dumbledore.
Oh, it's Michael Gambon.
Michael Gambon.
Yeah.
He's the narrator for Charlie, either Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka and the newest one, the one with Johnny Depp. But
dang, that's the first time I've been wrong about an actor in a very long time.
I mean, you've been wrong multiple times.
That's just the first that we've caught in a very long time.
No, I catch you a lot, but.
But yeah, besides the point, they still did a great job switching him in and making it seamless, so that way barely anybody noticed.
Right, and with that, you also keep the same storyteller. We talked about this last week, but when you have the same storyteller going through your series, it's going to be cohesive. And that's what Pirates of the Caribbean did. They kept the same people on the entire time. And when it started losing people was when they started switching out the storytellers. Because your storytellers aren't only the creators or the directors. It's also the actors that compose that entire idea. And the change of Dumbledore, that was minor. but it also captured something bigger, if that makes sense. They changed it subtly enough that that change wasn't caught by everybody that watched the movies. And with Pirates of the Caribbean, they kept the same cast throughout all the movies. Even Barbossa, they kill him off, then they bring him back. But then you lose some of the minor stuff, some of the key details, like the main crew of the Black Pearl. They're not around for the 4th movie, and then the 5th movie. And you keep Jack Sparrow, Davy Jones, and a few of the other cast members when you realize we were here for a team, not just Jack Sparrow. They were leaning towards looking solely at a specific character when really it was Pirates of the Caribbean was about pirates, plural, of the Caribbean.
Yeah. And mind you, I'll sit down and watch a movie that has Jack Sparrow in it, no matter what, even if it's a piece of garbage. But I want to watch a good movie. And Jack Sparrow alone cannot give you a good movie.
Right. And that's what we're learning right now. And that's why Disney has to really hone in on what made their first movie so great. It was storytelling. They were telling an original story. And granted, it was based off of the amusement park ride, which already, that's sort of original on its own. But they still created this story off of what seemed to be nothing. You had basic concept, Pirates of the Caribbean, and then you carried on with that. You said yes, and you created something great.
Yeah. And I feel like for Disney, it's a little bit easier to have a flop here and there because they have so many big franchises like Marvel, Star Wars, and like then you have all your Disney princesses and stuff like that.
Then all the remakes.
So they have a lot of room to, like, if they make a really bad movie, they have room to fumble. And then with their, like, Disney originals, like, TV shows and movies coming out, it's easier to lose a show or a movie now than it was back then. So I feel like their quality has gone down. I feel like one of the only, like, crazy good shows that they've put out in a while has been Mandalorian.
Right. And that's primarily because they stuck to a different formula. With Rise of Skywalker and all the other movies, they all fall under the same pitfall. They follow a formula. They have this character that gains power because they didn't know they had it. Then they are caught in the crossfire between a conflict between a super evil bad guy and this underdog good guys until they come to a climax where they find a pretty much copy and pasted character at this point. Because Kylo Ren in the new trilogy was essentially Darth Vader, but not as developed. Sure, we got a little bit more character development as the movies went on, but in all honesty, it seemed rushed. It didn't seem like we got enough time with him.
Oh, 100%. And, like, the thing about Star Wars is you have such good Star Wars stories. Like, you have the original trilogy. That's a great one. Then you have the prequels. As much as people bag on the prequels, they're not bad movies. They're not good movies, but they're not bad. The newer trilogy isn't the best, but it's still Star Wars. Like, it was still, if it comes out, I'm going to watch it because it's Star Wars, and I enjoyed my time in the theater. And then you have, like, a Solo story. Loved that movie. And then you have Rogue One, debatably one of the best Star Wars stories to ever be captured because of how different it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like for a brand as big as Star Wars, they could do a lot of good going off on these side adventures. Like they're coming out with the Obi-Wan TV show.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for that. And then they're coming out with a Maul one. And then I want to say they were going to do a Bounty Hunter one, even though we kind of already have like the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Star Wars is one that they have so much room to play with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it boils down to originality. Disney and these other production studios like Universal, Paramount, they all stick to the same characters. Granted, Disney has branched out with like Frozen and new Marvel titles, but at the same time, they're not putting out really original content. They've been doing the live action remakes of all their animated films, and in all honesty, they've been making bank off of them, but it's not original. And people have been getting upset about this because they're watching the animated versions and they're saying these were better than what we got. Sure, we got Seth Rogen as Pumbaa, but what was wrong before?
Like, the Lion King one, for instance, is a good one, but it's still, you could watch the original animated one and get the exact same feel. And mind you, the live action Lion King isn't really even live action. It's CGI the whole time.
Yeah, but it looks good.
Yeah. And then, like, I feel Maleficent, like those, Maleficent 1 and 2, is really, really good for the fact that they take what you thought was a story that was just going to be rehashed and retold and changed it and added new elements to it. So something like that, where you take an original story, like Sleeping Beauty, and then change it, makes it so much better. Then they had great actors like Angelina Jolie. So,
and then that's the only actor you can name.
Yeah, because that's the only good one in the movie. But it's fine.
Well,
that, and then I will say the guy who plays the crow was pretty good. I just can't remember his name off the top of my head.
See, and that's one of the key issues too. Disney's relying on star power alone because they'll cast. It's becoming more prominent now, but Disney's been making these miscasting decisions based off of star power. Like, who remembers the not Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast movie?
And
they cast. I
got like 5 minutes into that movie and then turned it off.
Yeah, because they got Emma Watson to be in it. And granted, she was great in Harry Potter. Awesome character. She brought Hermione to life. But she can't sing.
Nope.
And in a movie that is kind of reliant on singing, it didn't have anything to go for.
Well, and the funny thing about singing is we've all seen Greatest Showman. The opera singer chick,
right?
I always forget her name. She doesn't actually sing in the movie. It's someone else singing, and she's just mouthing, like, lip singing, basically.
Right, and dubbing sometimes is seen as this taboo for actors. But in all honesty, if you can make it work, it really doesn't matter.
When I first found out that she was lip singing, I was shocked because I thought it was her actual voice, and then I was impressed that they were able to convince me that it was actually her singing, when in reality it's just lip singing. So,
right,
that kind of stuff. If they did that with the Emma Watson, I feel like it could have made the movie better. But even then, just cast someone who could sing, and then you don't have to deal with that issue.
Right. And that's kind of the big problem. Disney and Paramount are casting people that don't suit the characters. They look at the script, they say, okay, here's what we got. This is how we're going to sell the movie. This is all for production. And it seems like they're just making these decisions for their bottom line. They're making casting decisions, story decisions, production decisions based off of what they can afford, what's going to sell the most, and what's going to reach audiences the best.
Yeah. And there's a couple actors who, like, if you said Jeff Goldblum was in something, I'm going to watch it because it's Jeff Goldblum. So there's some actors where, like, yes, their star power will make me watch a movie because I want to see how they're portrayed in that movie. So there's some where the movie could be a complete like dumpster fire. But as long as the actor's in it, I'll watch it. I might hate the movie after, but I'll at least watch it once.
Right. And with that star power, we're going to keep running into this problem where, yeah, we have Brad Pitt in this movie, but we've seen like 15 movies of Brad Pitt, right? Like just in a straight row.
Yeah.
And honestly, I want to see something different. There's actors that are coming out of the woodwork now that some of the older actors are starting to leave. Like, I just realized Johnny Depp was 57. He doesn't look it. You don't realize that. But when you do, it's like, okay, so some of the old guard are starting to age out of the acting scene.
Yeah, and there's so many new ones. Like if you even look at like just the Star Wars, like we were talking about earlier, John Boyega's a great actor, and so is Ridley.
Yeah, Daisy.
Like they're so like talented that if you give them the right role to play, they'll do great. And then there's just so many new actors coming up that are going to be great when you cast them in the right roles. You just have to cast them in the right roles.
Yeah. And
that's what I feel like is hard about casting is you could get like a small time actor who fits the role perfectly, but if no one's heard of all these small time actors, you're not going to draw in as big of a crowd. So I can appreciate what they're trying to do with the big actors, but sometimes you got to think about the movie as less of like a cash grab and more of a project.
Right.
And you want to give yourself the best opportunity to perform well on the project. Yeah. So
it's
also Hollywood, and it's all about money.
It's a creative work. And when you start treating a creative work as a job, it's no longer going to suit a purpose. When you treat, if I say, oh, yeah, I'm going to work at McDonald's, I'm not going to be enthusiastic about that. Unless maybe I'm SpongeBob or something. Where that's what my life circles around. But if you say you're going to go work over at Disneyland as an Imagineer, I'm going to be treating that a lot differently than flipping burgers. Because as an Imagineer, I am dealing with so much, with like the happiest place on earth. It's
quotation mark.
Not right now.
Yeah.
But there's a level of enthusiasm that carries in with different environments.
And I feel like if you can get the right team behind you, you could do so good. Like one of my favorite director of all time, James Cameron, has the Avatar series coming out, the Blue People, and he waited until 2009. He had the script written back in like 1970 or something like that, and waited till technology allowed him to make the movie. So the first one came out in 2009, and then we have close to a 13-year gap of when the second movie is going to come out because he was waiting for the technology to catch up to what he wants to do. And I feel like someone like that who really appreciates his films and wants them to do the best they can and is waiting for technology to give him the opportunity to make the things he wants to make is the type of attitude more people need to have.
Exactly. And too often we're seeing the creative process being stifled down by producers and companymen and people that are higher up who look at the numbers, not who's attached to it.
Yeah, that's kind of like the whole that Spider-Man fiasco we had with Sony and Marvel.
Yeah.
Like that, everybody was pissed at Sony and started boycotting them, and then Sony had to fold and let Marvel back in. But like the fact that Sony even tried doing that is sad, because Marvel's one of the only series that I feel like you could pump out over and over again, like back to back recession, And
right.
people will still want to watch it because they're high quality movies. The teams behind them know what they're doing. So there's some projects like that where the Marvel series is really good about. If you have a movie once a year, I don't have to be worried about the movie flopping. Whereas, like, sadly, one of the greatest series of all, Star Wars, can't do that.
Yeah.
So,
well, with Marvel, they split up the properties. So when they split up Marvel as a whole, they like dished out characters to different studios. That's what happened. Deadpool going to Fox, the X-Men going to Fox, Spider-Man going to Sony, and it was like a divorce essentially.
yeah.
Everybody had their own custody battles, but they kept these characters thinking that they were capable of standing alone when they were built to be in a fixed universe, and that goes against the point that we were making earlier. But those characters were meant to be in a universe. Their backstories, their worlds were shaped by the actions of others, and vice versa.
Yeah.
You can't...
Like, what I think is funny is when DC tried doing the DC cinematic universe.
Right.
And it was so bad.
Yeah.
Like, no one likes DC movies. And mind you, I love the DC universe.
Well,
I like their shows better than Marvel and their comics better than Marvel. But the movies are just garbage.
Well, yeah, I mean, they create great standalone films. The Joker was...
Yeah, like Joker.
Was a hit. Aquaman, that was good. Wonder Woman, that was a hit.
Yeah.
And that was because they were telling these stories that was solely focused on these characters. It wasn't jumping from, oh, okay, so we have Batman and we got Superman. How are we going to connect them? Oh, they got their mothers have the same name. Okay, that's a connection. So we could do that. No.
Yeah.
They focused on these characters and they gave them personality and they made them their own thing. They didn't try and expand everything into impossible criteria.
Yeah, like I feel like with DC, they tried to make the characters feel like different, if that makes sense. Because like Superman had personality in the comics and had like a relationship with Lois and had like a life. And then in the movies, it's like he's constantly in the suit and he's never his alter ego. So he's constantly this like God figure who has no emotions.
Granted, they did a good job with Superman in Man of Steel. I enjoyed that interpretation. But then
I did too.
But then they took a turn that Marvel would have chosen differently on. They kept that movie, and they decided if they were going to do a universe, they would have hinted at something in that movie. But they didn't.
Yeah.
So when they tried to interpret something or try and weave something into that network, they were trying too hard. It was kind of like forcing a square peg down a round hole. They're not going to be able to do it naturally. However, if they hinted at something like the Batman defeats Zod and he's in custody lockup, and as he goes through, he walks past a couple of villains from maybe Batman. So like Killer Croc is sitting in a cell in the shadows, something like that. Something that gives us that depth that says, ooh, there's something right there that we're not going into right now, but just know that it's there.
Yeah, that's what they did in the Spider-Man movie. So Spider-Man, oh wow, I can't think of the name and it's going to bug me.
The new one or the...
Vulture.
Yeah, Vulture.
No, the new, yeah. The Vulture's in prison, and then you run in to another one of his like old school villains.
Uh-huh.
And they're hinting at the Sinister Six and stuff like that. Where if you're a super fan and know the like lower in universe behind what makes Spider-Man, you can appreciate what happened. Just like how they have Flash,
and even people that aren't aware of that larger universe or haven't read the comics, they can see that, oh, he recognized this other guy, so we should maybe pay attention to this. And there's still an aura of mystery behind who these characters are as they relate to the universe.
Yeah, like when they announced that Far From Home was going to have Mysterio, a lot of the fans knew that Mysterio usually played a villain, and it was weird to see him in a hero role. And then we were kind of like showing up to the movie theater expecting him to go bad at some point. And sure enough, it looked a little weird with all the drones, but he eventually was a villain in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, stuff like that, where they hold something in front of your face that if you know what's going on, because you've like paid attention to the expanded universe of it, you'll know what's going to happen.
And that's one of the key things about creating this universe. If these production companies want to create a universe, they have to think about the tie-ins after they make the film, not during it. They have to focus on creating this film that people are going to want to see multiple times instead of just repeating this formula. If they create this,
I feel like
film that people, if they create this film that people enjoy entirely, they can put in the tie-ins towards the end, maybe like a little Easter egg somewhere in the middle of the movie, but they don't have to show their hand. They just have to kind of hint at it a little bit, and then you can pivot into the next film. And that's what Marvel did. That's what everybody else did. And that's why series that fail so hard is because they're like, oh, look at this. We have the universe. Like the dark cinematic universe that Universal did. That's what they did. They, midway through the movie, they were like, well, here's the secret society that captures and kills monsters, led by Dr. Jekyll. Let's see how many other monsters we can squeeze into this. No, that's not what you should be doing. Focus on the mummy first. Don't focus on any of the other monsters. Focus on telling the mummy story and then hint at the dark universe afterwards.
Yeah. And like another big thing in cinema and TV is anime. And what I think is interesting about anime is they have what's called filler episodes. So let's say, for instance, like Naruto, one of the biggest animes, if not biggest thing in cinema ever. Like if you say Naruto,
I don't say that.
Know what you're talking about.
Don't say that. If we call Naruto cinema, they might make a live action remake.
Oh god. But so Naruto has one of the biggest universes in anime next to like Dragon Ball Z and One Piece.
Nobody can get close to One Piece.
Yeah, One Piece is ridiculous. But so Naruto has obviously the main story arc, and I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it. But they have like the main story arc that runs throughout the entire show. Like Naruto Shippuden has 17, I think either 16 or 17 seasons. And they have the main story throughout the whole thing sprinkled about. They have a ton of filler episodes and side quests, like a video game. And I feel like that kind of stuff is okay if you did it in movies, where you have like, let's say your filler movie could be like your first one, where you go through like a little skirmish between a bad guy, and then you sprinkled in a little bit of the main story stuff.
Well, I don't honestly believe in that either. I don't think that they should be producing these movies to be filler, because they sort of tried something like that with Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin. No, Batman Forever, because Batman and Robin introduced Robin. That actually did character development stuff. With Batman Forever, they had all the cards already laid out. They had Robin, they had Batman, and they were just doing their thing. But it did so badly because it didn't have the same feel as the other movies. Sure, for little kids it might have been fine, but it didn't tell a story. And at the end of the day, that's what people are getting angry about. That these classic franchises that they've grown up on aren't telling stories. They're just repeating the same things.
Yeah, I could see that. But what, like, my point that I was trying to get to is, instead of, like, we were talking about earlier, like, showing your whole hand, like, all of the cards, you can sprinkle the cards out throughout the movies and kind of tie everything in for your big reveal, instead of, like, here, look at this. Here's the main villain right off the bat. You're going to see him in movie 5.
Yeah, but a good universe shouldn't spell that out for you. It should be like, oh, we're passing something by that, yes, it's there because somebody did something else. Like if you pan through like a pan shot of a city and you see Lex Tower, but you don't address it, like have a voiceover narration or like have somebody explaining, oh, here's Lex Tower. You just leave that in and people say, oh, there's Lex Tower. I wonder if that's going to come into play. Because that's world building. That's leaving something in there without actively spelling it out for people to look at. It's like I drive past Chick-fil-A. I'm not going to go into a monologue over, oh, Chick-fil-A came in like 3 years ago after the McDonald's moved out. No,
you don't. You
don't
monologue while you drive.
Only on unnumbered days.
Okay.
But
I thought I was in a podcast with a crazy person for a second.
I mean, you still are, you know.
No, fair.
But at the end of the day, you don't have to spell things out for the audience. We're going to get it anyway.
Yeah. Like, I feel one of the... Like, I'm about to get a little off topic here. But one of the things that I feel like is decent storytelling is a video game. Because you spend hours upon hours engrossed in this universe. So when you have a good video game, like let's say the Fallout series or Halo, or even like, heck, Mario Brothers occasionally, if you have a really, really good video game, I could be content sitting there all day for like 18 hours playing this one game. Like I just got Shadows of Mordor, and it's such a fun game, and I could see myself probably playing it for hours. And it's games like that where I feel like let's talk about gaming movies like Sonic. Then you have the
actually on the note of Shadow of Mordor, that's a spin-off of Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they
one
did
of
it
the best movies ever.
Exactly. And
It's based off a book.
Exactly. And what they did with that with the game is that they didn't ruin the story. They did their own thing. They took the universe as a whole and they went with a different direction. They weren't dealing with the same things that Frodo did or that Aragorn did. They dealt with an entirely different scenario. And people like that. And that's what we want to see. We don't want to see the same thing over and over again. Granted, in every Batman film, it feels like we're seeing his parents die every time. But if we can see a different side of that, that's what we want.
Yeah, and I feel like with like video games, they're going to be a hit or miss. Like you have Call of Duty, where some of their Call of Duties are really great games, and then other ones are Infinite Warfare. So you just just have to.
They go completely off the rails.
Yeah, but that's where I feel like anything to do with creativity, you're gonna run into that problem where you have people who are really dedicated versus people who just are in it for the money. You can look at that in like anything to do with creativity.
Exactly.
And ultimately, movies, books, TV shows, video game, it's all a form of storytelling. You're giving somebody a story and telling them, hey, this is how this is going to run. This is what it's going to mean. And you could leave it open enough that we can interpret it on our own. but you're still telling a story. And I feel like that's where Hollywood has kind of forgot why they became Hollywood. They were giving people a story to escape from their real lives and be able to look at it and be like, sweet, now I'm in Middle Earth, or now I'm in the Star Wars galaxy. And it's great when you have stories like that, but then you can also have flops like live action Avatar or the DC movies. So when you look at stuff like that, you could have to appreciate the good movies and laugh at the bad ones.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where Hollywood's kind of messed up, is they're, like, my movie's going to be a great movie. If you have that mentality, you have to back it up with a great plot and great characters and a great director and, like, story-driven concepts, instead of being like, hey, we're going to give you this, like, A, B, and C, and then skip all the way to C and the next movie.
Yeah. Or when they're trying to cram in way too much information into just one movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
I'm trying to think of, like, a really good example of that.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. They fit an entire season of a show into one movie. And they missed so much, and they didn't do justice to the characters. They created characters that look nothing like the old ones, and
mind you, if they don't look anything like them, as long as the actor is good, I can appreciate if you look, like, let's take Sokka. If Sokka's actor looked different but was exactly like Sokka, I can appreciate it. They take the funny joke guy and turn him into this, like, serious bad A. That's not Sokka's character at all.
I know, and then they just they gut the entire, what made these characters who they were, in exchange for what they felt like was cool at the time. Like, they want Batman characters when it's a Deadpool film. They don't want these funny characters. They want these serious characters that's going to make everything more dramatic and make the stakes come even higher. That's not what you should be doing. You should be making these films so people are entertained by them, so that they recognize these guys and they're like, okay, it's not too bad. It's the comic relief. So yes, we have these moments of tension, but you know what? That's a little funny. Okay, I'll laugh. But we don't get that.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're a little kid, I would have watched anything as a kid and gone, whoa. But now I'm 18. I've been around the movie genres and TV shows, so I can appreciate when something's good and when something's bad. So when you take a series that we've grown up on and then bring it back down for the little kids to try and get them engrossed in it, you just left your entire fan base that you built from the time we were like 5 to now.
Exactly.
And reverted back to the 5-year-olds.
Exactly.
When you could, yeah, like
it's like scaling.
Young Justice. Well, no, so Young Justice is a DC TV show. It's a great TV show. I loved it. It started out when we were younger and went 2 seasons, got canceled, and it was a great 2 seasons. They brought it back for a 3rd season, and instead of going back to the kids' stuff, they appreciated that all the fans are now older, so they made it an older TV show and added some darker elements. Stuff like that I can really, really appreciate and love because it matures with its audience.
But then you have a show like Teen Titans, where it starts off great. It took this anime style and put it on Cartoon Network, and people clung on to it. It was a little jarring at first because everybody was used to the regular cartoon format, like Batman the Animated Series. But then they articulated this emotion with these characters that had their funny moments and had their serious moments. And people enjoyed that because it was appropriate for the appropriate times. And then you got Teen Titans Go, which catered to a demographic of kids, little kids that didn't really appreciate the source material that was in front of them. Granted, it came off with some funny jokes in it, and it even spun off into popularity with the movie and continued seasons. But at the end of the day, you still have the original fans who grew up on the OG Teen Titans, and they're wondering where's our serious moments? Because the serious moments have been replaced by fart jokes, and nobody wanted that.
The little kids, if you're just aiming to make money, yes, you aim for the younger audiences. But if you want your series to last and be memorable and be something that fans will go back to 10 years down the line, it has to mature with its audience, or at least just stay what it is.
And that's that's one of the biggest problems of Hollywood. They can't make these movies to cater to what people want at the time. That's like kind of like the universe format for the Mummy and the Dark Universe. And then they never think, what about this movie is going to stand the test of time? Because you look back and you see the original Mummy not original Mummy, but the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, and we all watched that multiple times because it told a beginning, middle, and end. And we liked the story. We had funny characters. We had the stakes high, and it was just something that we were nostalgic for. It felt comfortable. But then you create these series like Teen Titans Go, which cater to these younger kids who aren't familiar with the source material, not familiar with Batman or Robin or Raven or Beast Boy, and they're just laughing because they're making a bunch of fart jokes.
Like, you could give them anything and say, hey, this is your new favorite show, and they'll be like, okay, so you didn't need to ruin a franchise you built up. But that's the big problem with Hollywood. And if it doesn't change, it's going to ruin so many more great series. Like, I can only imagine what they're going to be working on after the quarantine is done, and they have, like, time to actually pursue projects. Like, I'm worried for what we're going to get.
Yeah. And if they're focusing on remakes, do it to the films that need it. Do you remember the Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy?
Of course.
That was a garbage fire.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy has some really funny roles, but that wasn't one of them. It was an amalgamation of what Disney thought the Haunted Mansion looked like. It was what they thought the tone of their movie should be, and they kept going to this lighthearted tone when in reality they should have gone for a much darker gothic tone, because that's what the Haunted Mansion was. It wasn't this, ooh, we're kooky, bunch of spirits. No, it was a spooky experience where you went through this mansion and ghosts were just doing their thing without this constant comic relief that didn't really tie into anything.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely... I feel like if you're going to do a remake, you have to remake something that needs it. Whereas, like, some movies, like the Fantastic Four remake...
Yeah.
They didn't need it. It just made it terrible. So
there's been... And with Marvel especially, trying to remake a superhero film, they need to... If they're going to stick to formula, and I know this is what we were trying to talk against for the past hour, is that they need to take their superhero films and tag them onto something successful. Because while the remake was bad, what if they tagged on something like Mr. Fantastic sitting in Iron Man's chair, in his office or something like that, at the end of a film? It would have been like, oh, are we going to see the Fantastic Four in the next movie? And that would have tied it in. That's what they did with Spider-Man. They didn't give him his own film originally. They tied him on to Civil War. And his films did well on their own. But that's what people were drawn into. with the Fantastic Four, it felt like I didn't even notice when it released, to be completely honest. I didn't even know it was out when it came out.
The only reason I saw it was because my cousin was in town, and he was, like, obsessed with it. We went to the theater. He got, like, halfway into the movie and then was like, okay, let's leave. And I was like, what? Okay. And, like, mind you, I was a little younger, so I was like, the effects are really cool. This is a great movie. And then I rewatched it, like, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's a terrible movie.
I know. And granted, all those actors went off to do their own really good things. Like Michael B. Jordan came back in Black Panther, and he was freaking awesome in that.
Yeah.
But it was a time where they didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that Fantastic Four is no longer a part of the main Marvel canon. Well, that Fantastic Four. Because if it was, it would be a little confusing because 2 guys that look exactly like Michael B. Jordan? Really?
And you have to think the original Fantastic Four movies had Chris Evans.
Yeah. So wow, that's a weird thing. So he did a Marvel flop and then a Marvel hit. Has everybody done like a big superhero flop first and then done the hit? Because Ryan Reynolds did that, Green Lantern, then Deadpool.
I don't know. I don't think so. Not all of them, at least.
Most of them, though.
Well, I'm trying to think of, like, Chris Hemsworth didn't.
Yeah. But he did Ghostbusters, so that made up for it.
Yeah, Pratt didn't really do anything bad.
Chris Pratt, yeah.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it's only a couple of them, but still.
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
So there's some actors.
I still need to see Black Widow.
The fact that movie got delayed hurts so bad.
Yeah, because it felt finished, right? Like, we saw the trailers for it. It seemed to be coming out soon, and I was like, why wouldn't they just release it on Disney Plus? I don't get it.
I think it's because it's a Marvel movie, and they're like, we could get so much in the box office if we just wait.
Yeah. I mean, what if Disney Plus really wanted to do something? Why don't they just say, oh, we're going to offer it on Disney Plus, so if you want to see it, sign up. It would be a good way to sell their subscription service, besides, what was it, The Mandalorian and all their other original shows. Because right now they're in a lull. They don't really have new content coming out. Because they were supposed to have, like, Jedi Academy coming out soon. And I'm not seeing that anywhere.
Like, there's a couple shows that were supposed to be coming out and got delayed.
Yeah.
But then you have, like, the Artemis Fowl.
That movie sucked hard.
Oh, yeah, it did, and it had a couple, like, decent actors in it. It had, like, Josh Gad. He's usually a pretty good actor. So it was surprising to see him in a movie that flopped that hard.
Yeah, I don't know. Disney is not taking the right steps when it comes to that kind of storytelling. They need to go dark with it. If they keep going the lighthearted route, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and mind you, it's a kid franchise. So I can understand them not going dark on movies like that, but then when you give us a movie that's meant for your adult audiences, just go full blown. Like, there's no reason to be lighthearted. Like the Pirates of the Caribbean. Perfect example. They could have gone so much darker with it and would have made the movie so much better.
But they didn't.
Yeah, and then you have, like, I'm trying to think of another.
Well, with Artemis Fowl, they create this setup to a character that in the trailers looked good. It looked reliable. It looked dedicated to the source material. But then you watch it and you realize Marvel didn't pay attention to any of that. They wanted a hero that was black and white. You had good guys and bad guys. But Artemis Fowl wasn't that. The entire purpose of Artemis Fowl was to set up this guy who was intentionally a bad guy. It wasn't to create this character that had the best intentions at heart. The entire franchise, he was a bad guy. He was the anti-hero to everything. He knew what he was doing was wrong. He was doing it for himself. But Disney wanted this black and white hero, and they didn't care how they got it.
Yeah, Disney had some major flops. But I will say, they are getting semi-better with what they're doing. Because, for instance, like, back to Star Wars, they're bringing back Obi-Wan Kenobi, the original actor, for the TV show instead of replacing him. And, like, Clone Wars Season 7, they had a Darth Maul. They brought back the actor who played him in the prequels.
Yeah.
Which I thought they didn't need to do.
Well, when
it wasn't required. But it was freaking awesome.
When you have that perfect casting for a character, you have to keep him in. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, you got to keep him in. Did you see the Lando
series coming out?
Oh yeah, the one with
Childish Gambino.
Yeah,
Donald Glover.
Yeah, Donald Glover and the original Lando Calrissian.
Yep.
That they stayed true to that because both of them actually played Lando.
And they were both amazing at it.
Yeah, they were pretty good. And for all intents and purposes, that's one of the perfect castings that Disney did. They created these characters and they served it beautifully. But then you have these characters that are miscast, like Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast. And yeah, you have to think, is Disney thinking about these casting decisions with the best intentions at heart? Because I feel like with Solo, that's a different treatment than they do with their regular Disney properties. With Solo, you have people that understand Star Wars. You have creative interpretations because it was up to a creative interpretation. There was nothing that said specifically what happened. There was like little bits, like the Kessel Run, that was specifically said in the other movies. But everything around that was a mystery. Everybody didn't know what was going to happen. So when you got a storyteller that took a creative liberty with it, nobody could fact check it because it wasn't wrong necessarily, and it wasn't right either. It was somebody else's interpretation, and nobody could dispute that.
Yeah. But, I don't know. Hollywood will always go through its growing up phases where they're trying to figure out how they're going to be for the next, 20 to 30 years, and then it'll be great. And then we'll get back to they're going for money again. So,
yeah.
We're just in one of those periods where they're growing up.
I mean, this will always happen. There's always going to be a producer that's not going to like the creative process, that's going to look at how much money a project's going to make them. And while, yes, you do need to look at budget and make sure everything's coming down the pipeline correctly, you also have to make sure that your creative needs are being fulfilled as well. Because if you cut down everything to the bare necessities, you're not getting what the audience wants. The audience wants to be entertained. They want to have a story. And you're not going to get that when you're cutting corners and making sure that the budget is down to the bare minimum.
Yeah. And I can appreciate them trying to keep a movie cheap. But if you got to spend a little bit of money to make the movie great, spend a little bit of money and cross your fingers you make it all back. And I hate the mentality that they have where let's release a movie every year. I wish they'd space it out and make sure the movie's great.
Mm-hmm. They need to stop thinking, okay, we're going to do these movies so we get a constant stream of revenue. They need to do it so it's like, we're going to create these movies so that people enjoy them and they want to come back for more. Because with this mentality that we're we're being fed these movies, it's not healthy because we're getting used to such crap. It's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
And we've just become blind to the fact that these movies aren't what we wanted.
But it'll be interesting to see. Like, I'm curious to see what will happen after the quarantine, when Hollywood can kind of resume back to its norm, and see if being in quarantine helped at all or if it made things worse.
I don't know.
So,
I feel like 2021 is going to be a weird year.
For movies and TV, yeah. Me too.
But that is all the time we have left today. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope to see you all guys next week. Thank you, Austin, for coming on to the show.
Of course, it's always a pleasure.
And as always, I'd like to thank you guys and wish you guys to get home safely if you're not already home. If you're listening to this on the way to work, or if you're just listening to this in general, thank you. Your support is recognized, and we thank you. So, goodbye, and please be good people.